Order. Question number 4, the Honourable Clayton. Order. The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Canterbury Earthquake Recovery. Will he support my recommendation to set up an advocacy support service to provide earthquake-affected residents with help in dealing with their private insurers to prevent them being shunted between these insurers and the Earthquake Commission?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, since receiving that recommendation late last week, Friday I think, then I have had my office make contact with the Insurance Ombudsman to see what facilities might exist to expand some of the services there. I think it's very important that we don't begin by setting out a conflict situation between private insurers and claimants. It's worth noting that the first $100,000 worth of damage to the above-ground property is the responsibility of the EQC. In order to facilitate that work being done at a speedy pace, I say that, although it will take a long time, we have put in place a project management structure which should see that work progress steadily. Mr Speaker, the issue around the 1,200 or so houses that are identified as potentially, and I say only potentially, total economic loss is one that we first need to let the private insurers go and see what is required on their part, either rebuild or repair. And once we have a clearer picture about how that's unfolding, I would hope that there are sufficient services available through already existing government agencies to assist people who are having difficulties.
Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
What action is he currently taking to help distressed and confused residents who are facing the strain of trawling through, I'm sure we would accept, a maze of information, who have no access to independent expert advice?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, I make the point, I don't think it matters how much independent expert advice you get. If you're in a traumatised state, you're going to have a limited capacity to take that information on board. What we've tried to do over the last few weeks is simplify the whole of the situation so that we've had very thorough geotechnical examination of the ground that's been damaged. The result of that is that apart from 16 sections where there will need to be a bigger discussion about how to rebuild, if at all, everywhere else there can be a rebuild. That will mean that if you are one of the people contacted last week, you should engage with your insurer. And I've had discussions this morning with insurers and with EQC to make sure everyone's clear on this. The insurer then should work out a work program for either the demolition or repair of that property. As the properties become available either through demolition or repair, they can be remediated. In most cases that will mean simply a compaction of the existing earth, a filling and rolling. And the major civil works, we are hoping the Christchurch City Council, along with Waimakariri, who have already done so, will support that work being done in the public space in conjunction with the rest of that rebuild.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Does the Minister accept that earthquake-affected residents are following the procedure that has been outlined, that is going from EQC, who are recommending they then go to their private insurer, but are increasingly being treated like a pinball machine, bounced around between the EQC and their private insurer and vice versa? And what will he do to motivate private insurers to more swiftly shoulder their responsibilities when they are referred by the EQC quite rightly to the insurer and the insurer simply bounces the person back? It is creating heartache.
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't accept that that's happening in all cases. I don't doubt that it's happening in some cases. What I would say is that last Friday was the first day that there's been clarity in the public arena about the ground. What's now happening is that information about damaged properties and properties where there is land damage is being shared with the insurers. And the discussions that I've had with insurers this morning, I hope has left them in no doubt that they now have a responsibility to get on with indicating either demolition or rebuild for those 1,200 people. The vast majority of the balance, some 77,000 households, I believe is the number, are likely to be dealt with through the Project Management Office, or if they choose, their own repair agencies.
Dr Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister. How many more orders in Council does the Minister plan to recommend to the Governor-General under the Canterbury Earthquake Response and Recovery Act? And within what time period does he envisage these being issued?
The Honourable Cherry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I personally have no list of orders in council that we wish to put through. Orders in council will be developed as difficulties arise or as problems emerge in the months ahead. I would expect that all of the orders in council required would have been dealt with through the established process, I should say, at least before Christmas. It may be that going into the early part of next year, the legislation that we currently work on starts to become surfeit to requirement, and we will review that as we go through. We have no desire to keep that power in place for any longer than is absolutely necessary, but as the member knows, orders in council that are being considered are supplied to opposition parties ahead of time. I appreciate in some cases it's been a little short notice. I'm assuring the member that that won't be the case for the raft. While it was the case for the raft of orders in council that have gone through, it won't be the case for those in the future.
Question number 6, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank